Hello everyone. Welcome to the What If Anime YouTube channel. Today, we are diving into an exciting new story that will take your imagination to the next level. Let's get started. What if Naruto abandoned during wave mission and returns with a wife? The rain hammered against the bridge like 1,000 furious fists, each droplet carrying the weight of betrayal. Naruto Uzumaki lay crumpled against the cold steel girders, crimson mixing with rainwater as it pooled beneath his broken form. The demon fox's chakra flickered weakly within him, a dying ember in the storm of his consciousness. They left me. The words echoed through his fractured thoughts, more devastating than any physical wound Haku's Senban had inflicted. Through the haze of pain and consciousness slipping away like water through his fingers, he could still see their retreating figures. Kakashi-sensei's silver hair disappearing into the mist, Sakura's pink locks bouncing as she followed without a backward glance. Sasuke's dark form melting into shadow. They'd believed him dead. Or perhaps, and this thought cut deeper, they simply hadn't cared enough to check. The Kyuubi's voice rumbled through his mindscape, uncharacteristically subdued. Kid, they abandoned you. Left you to die like garbage. Shut up, Naruto wheezed, blood frothing at his lips. But the demon's words struck true, each syllable a hammer blow against his already shattered spirit. 3 years I've watched you pine for their acceptance. 3 years of your pathetic attempts to prove yourself worthy of their acknowledgement. And this is how they repay your loyalty? Thunder crashed overhead, nature itself seeming to mourn the death of innocence. Naruto's vision blurred, darkness creeping in from the edges. Maybe it would be easier to just let go, to sink into that welcoming void where betrayal couldn't touch him. But then, footsteps. Soft, cautious, approaching through the rain. He's alive, a voice called out, feminine and unfamiliar. Barely, but his chakra signature is still there. Naruto tried to lift his head to see who spoke, but consciousness was a slippery thing now. Strong arms lifted him from the cold metal, cradling him with surprising gentleness. Easy, little one, the voice whispered. You're safe now. I've got you. The last thing Naruto saw before darkness claimed him was a flash of blonde hair, not unlike his own, and eyes the color of deep ocean storms. Consciousness returned like the slow burn of sunrise, gradual and warm. Naruto's eyes fluttered open to find himself in an unfamiliar room, wrapped in blankets that smelled of mountain air and freedom. Bandages covered most of his torso, pristine white against skin that should have been scarred but somehow wasn't. The Kyuubi's healing factor, a woman's voice explained, as if reading his thoughts. Remarkable, really. I've never seen anything quite like it. Naruto turned his head, slowly, carefully, to find the source of the voice. A young woman sat beside his bed, perhaps in her early 20s, with long blonde hair that caught the afternoon light streaming through the window. Her eyes were indeed the color of storm clouds, gray-blue and infinitely deep. But it was the headband around her forehead that made his breath catch. Cumulbicure. The village hidden in the clouds. He began, his voice barely a whisper. Yujuto ni, she said simply. Jinchuriki of the Nibi, like you're the Kyuubi's container. Her lips curved in what might have been sympathy. I found you on that bridge 3 days ago. Your teammates left you for dead. The words hit like physical blows. Naruto tried to sit up, but Yujuto placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, keeping him prone. Don't, she said softly. Your body's still healing, even with the fox's help. And your heart. She studied his face with those storm cloud eyes. That's going to take longer. Naruto stared at the ceiling, processing. 3 days. They'd left him on that bridge for 3 days without even checking if he was alive. The betrayal felt fresh all over again, a wound that the Kyuubi's chakra couldn't heal. Why? He asked finally. Why did you help me? Yujuto was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. Because I know what it's like, she said eventually. To be alone. To be seen as a monster instead of a person. To have people look at you and see only the things sealed inside you, never the human heart that bears the burden. She rose from her chair, moving to the window. Outside, Naruto could see snow-capped mountains reaching toward the sky like grasping fingers. Cumulbicure doesn't coddle its Jinchuriki, Yujuto continued. But they don't abandon them either. You're not the first container I've found broken and bleeding, cast aside by those who should have protected them. She turned back to him, and something fierce blazed in her eyes. But you might be the last I save, if you choose to stay. Stay? Naruto's voice cracked. My village could use someone with your potential. The Reikage has been known to take in strays, especially ones with unique talents. She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. Besides, someone needs to teach you proper taijutsu. That form you were using on the bridge was atrocious. Despite everything, Naruto found himself almost smiling in return. Almost. They'll come looking for me, he said. Konoha, I mean. Eventually, Yujito's expression hardened. Let them try. You were declared Kia, killed in action. I checked. Your name's already been added to the memorial stone. As far as the world knows, Naruto Uzumaki is dead. The finality of it settled over him like a shroud. His old life, his old dreams, his old desperate need for acceptance. All of it was corpse cold now. Maybe it was time to bury it properly. What would happen to me in Kumo? He asked quietly. You'd train. You'd grow strong. You'd learn what it means to be valued for who you are, not what you contain. She paused. And if you proved yourself worthy, you'd find a family that would never abandon you. Family. The word hung in the air between them, pregnant with possibility. Naruto closed his eyes, feeling the Kyuubi stir restlessly within him. The demon fox had been unusually quiet since he'd awakened, as if waiting for this very moment. The cat speaks truth, Kit, came the rumbling voice in his mind. These leaf fools threw away a weapon that could have made them invincible. Their loss is the cloud's gain. And yours? Naruto asked silently. Freedom. Purpose. A chance to show the world what we're truly capable of when we're not held back by their fear and small-minded thinking. The Kyuubi's presence pressed closer. Say yes, Kit. Let us forge our own destiny. Naruto opened his eyes to find Yujito watching him patiently, as if she could sense the internal struggle taking place. Her expression was understanding, without judgment or pressure. Yes, he said finally, his voice stronger than it had been since waking. I'll come with you. Yujito nodded, something that might have been relief flickering across her features. Good. We leave at dawn tomorrow. The journey to Kumo is long, but I think you'll find it worth the wait. As she moved toward the door, Naruto called out, Yujito? She paused, looking back over her shoulder. Thank you, he said simply. She smiled. A real smile this time, warm and bright as summer lightning. Thank you, Naruto, for giving us the chance to show you what family really means. The journey to Kumogakure took 2 weeks, winding through mountain passes that scraped the belly of the sky. Yujito set a pace that challenged Naruto's recovering body without breaking it, and each day brought subtle improvements to his strength and stamina. More importantly, each day brought conversations that slowly began to heal the wounds in his spirit. Yujito wasn't like anyone Naruto had ever met. She spoke of being a Jinchuriki not as a curse to be endured, but as a responsibility to be mastered. She demonstrated techniques that made the Nibi and her work in harmony rather than constant conflict, showing Naruto that the relationship between container and tailed beast didn't have to be one of mutual hatred. The key, she explained one evening as they made camp in a mountain cave, is understanding that you're partners, not prisoner and warden. The Kyuubi has its own desires, its own goals. Find the common ground, and you'll both be stronger for it. The fox wants revenge, Naruto said, poking at their small fire with a stick. Against Konoha, against anyone who's ever hurt us. And you? What do you want? The question caught him off guard. For so long, his goals had been simple. Become Hokage, gain recognition, prove himself worthy of love and acceptance. But those dreams had died on that bridge in Wave Country, left to rot with his abandoned body. I don't know anymore, he admitted. Yujito studied him across the firelight, her expression thoughtful. When I was young, I wanted revenge too. Against a village that saw me as a weapon first and a person second. Against the other children who threw rocks and called me monster. Against fate itself for burdening me with the Nibi. What changed? I found something worth protecting instead of something to destroy. She smiled, but it carried notes of old pain. Revenge is like poison, Naruto. It hurts the one who carries it more than anyone else. But protecting something precious? That gives you strength that revenge never could. The Kyuubi stirred restlessly within him. Soft words from a soft heart, the demon growled. Power is what protects. Fear is what ensures survival. Fear is what killed your previous Jinchuriki. Naruto replied silently, surprising himself with the sharp retort. How many of them were driven mad by hatred and died alone? The Kyuubi fell silent, and Naruto sensed he'd struck closer to truth than the demon wanted to admit. The fox doesn't like that idea, he told Yujito. The Nibi didn't either, at first. She leaned back against the cave wall, absently scratching behind the ears of the ghostly blue cat that had materialized beside her, a partial manifestation of her tailed beast. But Matatabi learned, just as Kurama will learn. Kurama? The Kyuubi's real name. Did you think such an ancient and powerful being wouldn't have one? The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. All these years, he'd thought of the entity inside him as simply the demon fox or Kyuubi, a force of nature without personality or identity. But a name implied so much more. History, personality, perhaps even the capacity for something beyond hatred. She knows things she should not know, came Kurama's voice, but it lacked its usual venom. The cats were always too clever for their own good. Is that respect I hear? Naruto asked internally. Acknowledgement. There is a difference. But Naruto sensed it was more than that. For the first time since their partnership began, he felt something almost like curiosity from the great fox. They reached the outskirts of Chumogakure on a morning when the clouds hung so low they seemed to brush the mountain peaks. The village was unlike anything Naruto had imagined, built into the mountainside itself, with buildings that seemed to grow from the living rock. Lightning rods crowned every structure, and the air itself seemed to hum with electrical energy. Welcome to the village hidden in the clouds, Yujito said, and her voice carried pride that had nothing to do with arrogance. Your new home. The word home hit Naruto unexpectedly hard. When was the last time any place had truly felt like home? His cramped apartment in Konoha had been shelter, nothing more. But as he looked out over the cloud-wreathed village, something in his chest loosened just slightly. The Reikage will want to see you immediately, Yujito continued as they approached the village gates. A Kage is someone who measures value differently than most. He'll test you, but not in the ways you expect. The guards at the gate nodded respectfully to Yujito, their eyes curious but not hostile as they took in Naruto's presence. No one threw rocks. No one whispered demon or monster. They simply acknowledged him as they would any newcomer under Yujito's protection. The Reikage's office was at the village's highest point, carved directly into the mountain's peak. Sat behind his desk, a man built like a mountain himself, all muscle and controlled power, with lightning scars that spoke of battles won through sheer determination. So, he rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. This is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki that Konoha threw away. Naruto straightened his spine, meeting the Reikage's gaze directly. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Is it? I leaned back in his chair, massive arms crossed. Because according to my intelligence network, Naruto Uzumaki died on a bridge in Wave Country 2 weeks ago. His body was never recovered, but his teammates reported him killed in action. The words stung, but Naruto forced himself not to flinch. Then I guess Naruto Uzumaki is dead. What remains to be seen is who I choose to become. A smile spread across the Reikage's scarred features. Not cruel, but appreciative. Good answer. Yujito says you have potential. I say potential is worthless without the will to forge it into something useful. Are you prepared to work harder than you've ever worked before? Yes. Are you prepared to bleed, sweat, and possibly die for this village and the people in it? Yes. Are you prepared to bury whatever weak sentiment you still hold for the fools who abandoned you? This time, Naruto hesitated. The Reikage's eyes sharpened, reading volumes in that moment of silence. I thought as much, he said. You still hope they'll come for you. Still believe that somewhere in their hearts, they care enough to search for your body. He leaned forward, his presence suddenly oppressive. Let me be clear, boy. They won't. And if they did, if they came to my village demanding the return of their property, what do you think I would tell them? Naruto's throat felt dry. I don't know. I would tell them that we don't return the dead to life. And Naruto Uzumaki is very much dead. What stands before me now is a citizen of Chumogakure, under my protection. And they are welcome to test that protection if they feel confident in their chances. The finality of it washed over Naruto like a cold wave. Whatever bridges had once connected him to his past were not just burned. They were atomized, scattered to the winds like ash. Do you understand what I'm offering you? The Reikage continued, his voice gentler now but no less intense. Not just asylum, not just training, but citizenship. A place at this village's table. The right to call Kumo home and mean it. Naruto felt tears prick at his eyes, but he blinked them back. Why? You don't know me. You don't know if I'm worth the risk. Because Yujito believes in you, and I trust her judgment. Because this village was built by people who were cast aside, discarded, forgotten by those who should have valued them. And because the Reikage smile turned sharp, I have used for someone with your particular gifts. My gifts? The QB, yes. But more than that. I stood, moving to the window that looked out over his village. You were trained by Kakashi Hatake, were you not? The copy ninja himself? Naruto nodded reluctantly. Then you know techniques. Strategies. The inner workings of Konoha's military structure. The Reikage's reflection in the glass was predatory. Information has value, boy. And your information could save Kumo lives when the next war comes. The ethical implications hit Naruto like a physical blow. Betray Konoha's secrets? Use his knowledge against the village that had raised him, however poorly? They left you to die, Kurama reminded him, the fox's voice carrying an edge of satisfied malice. Your loyalty was repaid with abandonment. Why do you hesitate to do unto them as they have done unto you? Because, Naruto said aloud, surprising both the Reikage and himself, that would make me like them. A turn from the window, eyebrows raised. Explain. If I betray Konoha's secrets, I'd become someone who breaks faith with those who trusted him. Even if they broke faith first. Naruto's voice grew stronger as he spoke. That's not who I want to be. Not who I'm going to be. The Reikage studied him for long moments, and Naruto began to wonder if he'd just thrown away his only chance at a new life. Then they began to laugh. Deep, booming laughter that shook the windows. Outstanding, he roared. Yujito, your judgment remains flawless. This one has spine, even when it costs him. He moved back to his desk, still chuckling. Very well, Naruto Uzumaki, who is dead. I withdraw the request for intelligence. But the offer of citizenship stands, along with training that will forge you into something Konoha could never have imagined. Relief flooded through Naruto's system. Thank you? Don't thank me yet, the Reikage said ominously. Wait until you've survived your first month of training. Yujito will be your primary instructor, along with my brother Killer Bee when he returns from his mission. Between the two of them, they'll either kill you or make you into something worthy of the power you carry. As they left the Reikage's office, Yujito placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. You surprised him, she said quietly. Most people would have jumped at the chance for revenge. I'm not most people. No, she agreed, and something warm flickered in her storm-gray eyes. You're definitely not. 6 months in Kumogakure transformed Naruto from the inside out. But the changes went far deeper than mere physical conditioning. Under Yujito's patient guidance and Killer Bee's unconventional wisdom, he began to understand what it truly meant to harness the power within him rather than simply endure it. The training was brutal. Where Konoha had focused on rigid forms and predetermined techniques, Kumo emphasized adaptability and raw power application. Yujito pushed him to his limits daily. Her own mastery of the Nibi serving as both inspiration and impossible standard to chase. Your chakra control is sloppy, she observed during a particularly grueling session, watching as Naruto's attempted Rasengan destabilized for the dozenth time. You're trying to force the technique instead of letting it flow naturally. It's not natural, Naruto protested, sweat dripping from his brow. The chakra wants to go in 17 different directions at once, then go with it. Yujito formed her own chakra sphere, but unlike the tight, controlled spiral of a traditional Rasengan, hers flickered with blue fire, the Nibi's influence making it something entirely new. Stop fighting what you are, Naruto. Start using it. It was Killer Bee who finally helped him understand what she meant. The Eight-Tails Jinchuriki arrived at the village like a one-man natural disaster, all swagger and impossible rhymes. But beneath the eccentric exterior lay wisdom earned through decades of partnership with his tailed beast. Yo, little bro with the fox so bright, be wrapped. spinning around Naruto in dizzying circles. You're holding back with all your might. But power ain't about control so tight. It's about the flow when you let it ignite. I have no idea what you just said, Naruto admitted. B's grin could have powered the village's lightning rods. Then let me show you instead, yeah. What followed was less a training session than a masterclass in controlled chaos. B demonstrated techniques that shouldn't have been possible. Perfect fusion with Gyuki that made him faster than lightning, stronger than avalanches, more devastating than natural disasters. But it was the harmony between them that struck Naruto most profoundly. See that? Yujito murmured, watching B spar with 3 Jonin simultaneously and win. That's what's possible when Jinchuriki and tailed beasts stop fighting each other and start fighting together. The octopus fool has learned much, Kurama admitted grudgingly within Naruto's mindscape. His approach is not without merit. High praise coming from you, Naruto replied internally. Do not let it go to your head, kid. But perhaps it would not be entirely beneath our dignity to attempt something similar. The breakthrough came during Naruto's 7th month in Kumo, triggered by an event that should have been routine. He was running messenger duty between the village and an outpost when he encountered a group of missing nin attacking a civilian caravan. 3 against 1, all of them Chunin level at minimum, with hostages to complicate any rescue attempt. The old Naruto would have charged in headlong, relying on shadow clones and determination to carry the day. This Naruto paused, assessed, and for the first time in his life, asked his tenant for advice rather than demanding power. Kurama, he whispered, hidden behind rocks as he watched the bandits threaten the merchants. I need options. Fast ones. Finally, you asked the right question. The fox's presence pressed closer, but it felt collaborative rather than invasive. 3 enemies, 5 hostages, limited time. Conventional approaches will result in civilian casualties. But we are not conventional, are we, kid? No, Naruto breathed, feeling something click into place in his understanding. We're not. What happened next would be talked about in Kumo for years afterward. Naruto didn't simply access the Kyuubi's chakra. He merged with it, his body wreathed in golden flame that responded to his will like an extension of his own limbs. But unlike his previous berserker rages, this transformation was controlled, purposeful, elegant in its devastating efficiency. He moved like living lightning, appearing among the bandits before they could react. One opponent was disabled with a precision strike to the solar plexus. Another caught in a hold that leveraged the Kyuubi's strength without lethal force. The third managed to grab a hostage, pressing a kunai to the young woman's throat. Stay back, demon! The man screamed. I'll kill her! Instead of the rage such words usually provoked, Naruto felt only cold calculation. The old words couldn't hurt him anymore. He'd found something stronger than their fear to sustain him. You're right, he said quietly, golden chakra flickering around him like tame flames. I am a demon. But I'm their demon now. The bandit never saw the chakra arm that extended from Naruto's back, plucking the kunai from his grip with surgical precision before another arm lifted him bodily and deposited him unconscious beside his companions. The rescued merchants looked at Naruto with awe rather than terror, and one young woman, barely older than himself, stepped forward despite her obvious nervousness. Thank you, she said simply. What's your name? For a moment, Naruto hesitated. The honest answer felt dangerous, exposed. But then he remembered Yujito's words about finding things worth protecting. Naruto, he said. Naruto of Kumogakure. The words felt right in a way his old identity never had. When he returned to the village, Yujito was waiting at the gates, her expression unreadable. Word of his intervention had apparently traveled fast. The Raikage wants to see you, she said without preamble. Naruto's stomach dropped. Am I in trouble? That remains to be seen. But when they reached the Raikage's office, A's expression was thoughtful rather than angry. Tell me what happened at the caravan. Naruto recounted the events honestly, including his new level of cooperation with Kurama. When he finished, the room fell silent for long moments. Show me, the Raikage said finally. Sir, the transformation. Show me what you did. Naruto glanced at Yujito, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, he reached for the connection he'd forged with Kurama, feeling the fox's power respond to his call. Golden chakra enveloped him, but it was warm now rather than burning, protective rather than destructive. studied the display with professional interest. Partial transformation, full control, no signs of mental instability or berserker tendencies. He nodded approvingly. Outstanding work. Both of you, both of us, you and Yujito. She's been preparing you for this breakthrough since the day you arrived. The rakish smile was proud. What you've achieved typically takes Jinchuriki years to master, if they ever manage it at all. You did it in 7 months. Warmth spread to Naruto's chest, not the Kyuubi's chakra, but simple human pleasure at recognition earned through effort. Does this mean? It means you're ready for the next phase of your training. Missions. Real ones, with real stakes. A's expression grew serious. It also means you've passed the probationary period. As of today, you are a full citizen of Kumogakure, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. The words hit Naruto harder than any jutsu ever had. Citizenship. Belonging. A place where his strength was valued and his loyalty would never be questioned. Thank you, he managed through a suddenly tight throat. Don't thank me yet, the Raikage warned, but his tone was lighter now. Wait until you see what Yujito has planned for your advanced training. As they left the office, Yujito fell into step beside him, her expression thoughtful. How does it feel? She asked. To finally be home? Naruto considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, he'd been a broken boy desperate for any scrap of acceptance. Now he was something else entirely. Not fully grown, but growing into something that might one day be worthy of the trust these people had placed in him. Different than I expected, he admitted. Better. Good. She smiled, and he caught something in her expression that he'd been too damaged to recognize before. Genuine affection. The kind that existed between people who'd chosen to care about each other. Because we're just getting started. The cat speaks truth, Kurama rumbled within his mind. But the fox's voice carried satisfaction rather than menace. We have found our place at last, Kit. Now let us show the world what we can become when we're no longer alone. For the first time since that terrible day on the bridge, Naruto felt something that might have been joy unfurling in his chest. He was home. He was valued. He was exactly where he belonged, and this was only the beginning. 2 years passed like mountain storms, intense, transformative, leaving the landscape forever changed in their wake. Naruto grew taller, broader, his body adapting to Kumo's high-altitude training regimens and the demands of missions that would have broken his younger self. But the most significant changes were internal, invisible to casual observation but profound in their implications. He'd learned to laugh again. It happened gradually, starting with B's infectious enthusiasm and Yujito's dry humor, spreading until he found himself genuinely enjoying the company of his teammates and the rhythms of village life. The desperate need for validation that had driven his younger self had been replaced by something healthier. The quiet satisfaction of competence earned through effort. His relationship with Kurama had evolved beyond mere cooperation into something approaching friendship. The great fox remained proud, sarcastic, and occasionally bloodthirsty. But beneath the attitude lay genuine care for his container's well-being. Their bond had grown strong enough that Naruto could access the tailed beast's chakra without conscious effort, the golden energy flowing as naturally as his own life force. But it was his connection to Yujito that had surprised him most. It began as mentorship, she teaching him control, patience, the subtle arts of chakra manipulation that Konoha had never bothered to explore. But somewhere along the way, mentorship had deepened into friendship, and friendship had blossomed into something neither of them had anticipated. You're staring again, she observed without looking up from the mission report she was reviewing. They were in her apartment, sharing dinner after a particularly successful reconnaissance mission to the border with Earth Country. No, I'm not, Naruto protested. But he could feel heat rising in his cheeks. Yujito's lips curved in amusement. And I suppose you were just admiring the wall behind me with unusual intensity. The thing was, she was beautiful. Had always been beautiful. But that wasn't what caught his attention. It was the way she moved with unconscious grace. The way her eyes lit up when she was planning something complex. The way she hummed tunelessly while cooking and never seemed to realize she was doing it. It was all the small, human details that made her who she was beyond the power she carried. Maybe, he admitted, setting down his chopsticks. Maybe I was looking at you. Dangerous territory, Naruto. But her tone was teasing rather than warning. I'm your superior officer. Not on this mission you weren't. We were equals. Semantics. Important semantics. He reached across the small table, covering her hand with his own. Yujito, the words died in his throat. How did you tell someone that they'd saved your life in ways that went far beyond medical intervention? That they'd shown you what it meant to be valued, to belong, to have someone believe in your potential even when you'd stopped believing in it yourself? I know, she said softly, turning her hand to interlock their fingers. I feel it too. The admission hung between them like a bridge either was quite ready to cross. There were complications. Their positions in the village hierarchy. The complexities of relationships between Jinchuriki. The simple fact that they were both still young and learning who they wanted to become. But there was also truth in the way she looked at him. The way her touch sent electricity racing through his nervous system that had nothing to do with her lightning-natured chakra. This is probably a terrible idea, Naruto said. Probably. Yujito's smile was soft, vulnerable in a way he'd rarely seen. But when has that ever stopped either of us? The kiss was gentle, tentative, carrying the weight of 2 years' worth of growing trust and affection. When they broke apart, Naruto found himself grinning like an idiot. So, he said, trying for casual and failing completely. What do we do now? Now we take it slow. See where this leads without rushing toward any particular destination. She squeezed his hand. Is that acceptable to your impatient nature? For you? Yeah. I can manage slow. Finally, Kurama rumbled within his mindscape, the fox's satisfaction practically tangible. I was beginning to worry you were too dense to recognize what was in front of you. Were you giving me romantic advice? Naruto asked internally, mortified. Someone had to. Your instincts in battle are improving, but your ability to read emotional situations remains painfully inadequate. Before Naruto could formulate a properly indignant response, Yujito's expression shifted to something more serious. There's something you should know, she said. About why I was in Wave Country when I found you. I figured it was a mission. It was. But not the kind you're probably thinking. She released his hand, suddenly looking older than her years. I was hunting Orochimaru. The name hit Naruto like a physical blow. Orochimaru, the snake Sannin, the one who'd marked Sasuke with his curse seal, who'd been responsible for so much pain and corruption. Why? He asked quietly. Because he's been collecting Jinchuriki. Studying them, experimenting on them, trying to understand how to transfer tailed beasts between hosts. Yujito's voice carried old anger, carefully controlled. 3 containers have disappeared in the past 5 years. All of them found dead with their bijou extracted. The implications were staggering. If Orochimaru had been perfecting techniques for stealing tailed beasts, he was after you, Naruto realized. On that bridge. The attack wasn't random. No. Haku and Zabuza were his agents, whether they knew it or not. The plan was to weaken you, separate you from your teammates, then extract the Kyuubi while you were vulnerable. Yujito's expression was grim. If I hadn't been tracking him, if I hadn't arrived when I did. Naruto felt cold despite the warmth of her apartment. He would have gotten Kurama, and you would have died in the process. Just another casualty in his pursuit of immortality and power. The knowledge recontextualized everything. His abandonment, Yujito's timely arrival, even his teammates' decision to leave him behind. They hadn't just failed him. They'd unknowingly delivered him straight into a trap. Does the Raikage know? Naruto asked. He knows. It's why he was so willing to take you in, beyond the obvious strategic value of a Jinchuriki defector. Yujito's expression softened slightly. Kumo has always protected its containers, Naruto. When we learned what Orochimaru was doing, when we realized Konoha had left you vulnerable to his predations, you decided to intervene. We decided you deserved better. Everyone deserves better than being hunted like an animal for the power they carry. She reached for his hand again. The mission to find you wasn't coincidence, Naruto. It was rescue. The revelation should have been overwhelming, but instead, Naruto felt a strange sense of completion. The last pieces of a puzzle he hadn't even known he was solving clicked into place. His abandonment hadn't been mere callousness. It had been orchestrated by forces far beyond his teammates' understanding. Does it matter? Kurama asked within his mind. The intent behind their actions doesn't change the result. They left you to die, whatever the circumstances. It matters to me, Naruto replied silently. Understanding doesn't excuse, but it helps explain. You have grown wise, Kit. Perhaps too wise for your own good. Naruto? Yujito's voice drew him back to the present. Are you all right? Yeah. Just processing. He managed a smile. Thank you for telling me the truth, even though it complicates things. The truth usually does complicate things. That doesn't make it less necessary. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, the weight of revelation settling between them like snow on mountain peaks. Finally, Naruto spoke again. What happened to Orochimaru? Did you ever catch up to him? Yujito's smile turned predatory. That's a story for another night. But yes, we had our confrontation. And no, he won't be troubling any more Jinchuriki. The finality in her tone suggested the Snake Sanin story had come to a definitive end, and Naruto found he had no desire to press for details. Some victories were best left uncommented upon. So, he said instead, deliberately lightening the mood. Tomorrow's mission briefing. Any hints about where they're sending us next? Border patrol with the Lightning Country's northern frontier. 3 weeks in the mountains, just the two of us. Yujito's expression turned mischievous. Think you can handle being alone with me for that long? I think I can manage, Naruto replied, grinning. Though you might get tired of my company. Doubtful. As the evening wound down and they prepared to part ways, propriety demanding they maintain separate residences despite their growing closeness, Naruto felt a contentment he never experienced in his previous life. This was what home felt like. Not just a place to sleep, but people who knew your worst fears and chose to care about you anyway. You have changed much, Kit, Kurama observed as Naruto made his way back to his own apartment. From the broken child I first partnered with to this. Good change or bad change? Necessary change. You were weak before, not in body or chakra, but in spirit. Desperate for acceptance from those unworthy of your loyalty. Now you have found your strength. We found our strength, Naruto corrected. This wouldn't have been possible without you, perhaps. But the choice to grow, to heal, to become something greater than the sum of your traumas, that was yours alone. I merely provided the power to make your choices matter. As Naruto fell asleep that night, he found himself thinking not of the past but of the future. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new challenges, new opportunities to prove himself worthy of the trust Kumo had placed in him. And through it all, he wouldn't be alone. He had Kurama's strength, the village's faith, and Yujito's. Well, he wasn't ready to name what Yujito represented yet. But whatever it was, it filled the spaces in his heart that had been empty for too long. 3 years. 3 years since a broken boy had been abandoned on a bridge in Wave Country. And now Naruto stood before the mirror in his apartment, barely recognizing the man looking back at him. Gone was the short, scrawny child with 2 bright smiles and desperate eyes. In his place stood someone taller, broader, with muscle earned through relentless training and scars earned through missions that had tested every limit he possessed. But it was his eyes that showed the greatest change. Where once they'd burned with frantic need for acceptance, now they held the steady confidence of someone who knew his worth and didn't require external validation to maintain it. You're brooding again, Yujito observed from the doorway, leaning against the frame with arms crossed. She'd let herself in using the spare key he'd given her months ago. A small intimacy that still made his heart skip whenever she exercised it. I'm reflecting, Naruto corrected, turning to face her. There's a difference, is there? She moved into the room, and he caught the subtle tension in her posture that meant she had something important to discuss. Because you've been doing a lot of reflecting lately. She was right, of course. The approaching anniversary of his abandonment had stirred up thoughts he'd believed long buried. Not regret. He couldn't regret the path that had led him to this life, these people, this version of himself. But curiosity, perhaps. Wonder about roads not taken and people left behind. The Reikage has a new mission for us, Yujito continued, settling onto his small couch with the casual intimacy of someone who belonged in his space. High priority, long term. Interested? Always. What's the target? Intelligence gathering. Deep cover, possibly for months. Her expression grew serious. The location might be problematic for you. Naruto felt his stomach tighten. Where? Fire Country. Not Konoha directly, but close enough that we might encounter their forces. Yujito watched his face carefully. The Reikage wanted me to ask if you felt ready for that possibility. The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Was he ready? Ready to face the people who'd abandoned him, who'd moved on with their lives while he'd been remaking himself in lightning and cloud-touched air? The answer should be obvious, Kurama rumbled within his mind. You owe them nothing, Kit. Less than nothing. If the opportunity arises to show them what they discarded. That's not who we are anymore, Naruto replied silently. We're not driven by revenge. No. But justice? That might be another matter entirely. Yes, Naruto said aloud, meeting Yujito's gaze steadily. I'm ready. She studied his face for long moments, reading the truth behind his words with the skill of someone who'd learned to know him in ways no one ever had before. Good, she said finally. Because this mission is important, Naruto. There are signs that someone is trying to restart the war. Attacks on supply lines, border skirmishes that can't be traced to any official village policy. The Reikage wants to know who's pulling the strings before it escalates into full conflict. Any suspects? Several. Orochimaru had allies who didn't die with him. There are rumors of a new organization calling itself Akatsuki, collecting powerful missing nin for unknown purposes. Yujito's expression darkened, and there are whispers about someone gathering information on Jinchuriki locations and capabilities. The last part sent ice through Naruto's veins. Someone's targeting containers again? It's possible. Which is why this mission requires our particular skill sets. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. We can hide in plain sight, Naruto. Most people who might recognize us believe you're dead, and I'm not well known outside Kumo's borders. We can go places, learn things that normal agents couldn't access. It made sense from a strategic standpoint. But the personal implications were staggering. When do we leave? He asked. Tomorrow morning. We'll be posing as missing nin ourselves, powerful enough to be interesting to potential recruiters, not so powerful as to be immediately threatening. Yujito's smile turned sharp. Think you can play the part of a bitter exile seeking revenge against those who wronged him? I don't think I'll need to act much for that one. Good. Because if we encounter your former teammates, selling that performance might mean the difference between success and exposure. Her expression softened slightly. This won't be easy, Naruto. Seeing them again, pretending to be someone you've moved beyond. Are you certain you're prepared? Naruto considered the question seriously. 3 years ago, the thought of facing Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke would have sent him into either rage or despair. Now he felt something closer to curiosity. What had they become in his absence? Did they ever think about the teammate they'd left behind? Had his death changed them at all? I'm prepared, he said finally. But Yujito, whatever happens, whatever we learn, I won't let it compromise the mission. Kumo comes first. I know. She reached for his hand, squeezing gently. That's why I trust you with this. That's why the Reikage trusts you with this. That night, as they finalized their preparations and cover identities, Naruto found himself thinking about the irony of the situation. He was returning to Fire Country not as the desperate boy who'd once called it home, but as an agent of a foreign power, tasked with uncovering threats to his adopted village's security. The boy who dreamed of becoming Hokage was gone, replaced by someone whose loyalties lay with lightning and mountain air. Poetic justice, Kurama observed. They threw you away, and now you return as their potential enemy. We're not their enemy unless they make us one, Naruto corrected. This is intelligence gathering, not sabotage, for now. But if this Akatsuki organization proves to be a threat to our new family, then we'll deal with it. Together. Like we always do, indeed. Together. As dawn broke over Kumobakure's crowd-wreathed peaks, Naruto stood at the village gates beside Yujito, both of them dressed in the nondescript clothing of wandering mercenaries. Their headbands were hidden, their true allegiances concealed beneath layers of carefully constructed deception. Ready? Yujito asked, adjusting the pack on her shoulders. Naruto took one last look at the village that had become his home, the place where he'd learned what it meant to belong. Then he turned toward the distant horizon, toward Fire Country and whatever revelations awaited them there. "Ready," he said. And for the first time since that terrible day on the bridge, Naruto Uzumaki was returning to the land of his birth. But he wasn't coming home. He was coming as something else entirely. The border between Lightning and Fire Country was marked more by changing vegetation than any official demarcation. But Naruto felt the shift nonetheless. The air grew thicker, more humid, carrying scents that triggered memories he thought safely buried. Pine and earth and the particular quality of chakra that permeated places where shinobi had lived and died for generations. "Second thoughts?" Yujito asked quietly as they paused at a ridge overlooking the valley that would mark their entry into Fire Country proper. "No," Naruto replied, and was surprised to find he meant it. Just remembering. They'd spent the 3-day journey refining their cover story and contingency plans. To any observer, they were Kenzo and Yuki, missing Nin from a destroyed village, seeking employment with whoever would pay well enough for their particular skills. Yujito had altered her appearance with skilled transformation techniques, darkening her blonde hair to brown and changing her eye color to deep green. Naruto's own transformation was more subtle but equally effective. Contacts that turned his blue eyes gray, temporary tattoos that suggested a harder life than he'd actually lived, and careful adjustments to his posture and mannerisms that made him seem older, more bitter. The performance would be crucial if they encountered anyone from his past. Their first stop was a border town called Hayashi, large enough to offer anonymity but small enough that strangers were noticed and evaluated. The kind of place where information flowed like sake and secrets were currency more valuable than coin. "Remember," Yujito murmured as they approached the town gates. "We're here for work, not trouble. Let others approach us rather than seeking them out." The town was exactly what Naruto had expected. Muddy streets, buildings that had seen better decades, and people who watched newcomers with the calculating gaze of those accustomed to danger. They found Majinetten that asked no questions beyond whether payment would be in advance, and settled in to observe and listen. It didn't take long for opportunity to present itself. "You two look like you know which end of a kunai to hold," observed a grizzled man at the inn's bar that evening. He was missing his left eye and most of his right hand, but his remaining eye was sharp with intelligence. "Looking for work? Depends on the pay," Naruto replied in the rougher accent he'd been practicing. "And the risk? Both are substantial. I represent certain interests that require discreet individuals for sensitive operations." The man's smile revealed several missing teeth. Operations that the major villages would prefer not to know about. Yujito leaned forward slightly, playing her part as the more cautious member of their partnership. "What kind of operations?" "Information gathering. Asset acquisition. The occasional removal of obstacles to business." The man shrugged. "Nothing personal, you understand. Simply commerce by other means." It was exactly the kind of opening they'd hoped for. Over the next hour, they negotiated terms for what was presented as a simple intelligence-gathering mission. Infiltrate a merchant caravan. Identify which traders were secretly working for Konoha's intelligence network. Report back with names and operational details. Simple on the surface. But Naruto's training in Kumo had taught him to look deeper, and what he saw troubled him. "This isn't random," he told Yujito later, when they were alone in their room. "Someone's specifically targeting Konoha's civilian intelligence assets. That suggests either a very sophisticated enemy or someone with inside knowledge of how their networks operate," Yujito finished. "Someone who used to be part of the system." The implications were disturbing. A traitor within Konoha's ranks would explain the surgical precision of recent attacks on Fire Country's intelligence infrastructure. But it raised questions about motivation, scale, and ultimate objectives that their current mission briefing couldn't answer. "We need more information," Naruto said. "And that means getting closer to whoever's running this operation." 3 days later, they were traveling with a merchant caravan that wound through the forested roads toward the capital. Their official role was security, hired muscle to deter bandits and other threats. Their actual purpose was surveillance, watching for signs that would identify Konoha agents among the seemingly innocent traders. It was on the second day of travel that Naruto saw them. The checkpoint appeared routine. Konoha ninja inspecting cargo manifests and travel documents, a standard security measure for valuable goods moving through Fire Country. But as their caravan approached, Naruto felt his breath catch in his throat. Silver hair. a mask that covered most of his face. The lazy posture that concealed lightning-fast reflexes. Kakashi Hatake stood at the checkpoint, reviewing documents with the bored efficiency of someone performing a routine duty. "Breathe," Yujito whispered beside him, her own transformation holding steady despite the tension radiating from her partner. "Remember who you are now, Kenzo." He was Kenzo, missing means seeking employment. Not Naruto Uzumaki, abandoned student looking for answers or closure. The distinction was crucial for their mission's success. But as they drew closer, as Kakashi's visible eye swept over the caravan with professional assessment, Naruto felt the weight of 3 years' worth of suppressed questions pressing against his chest like physical force. "Did you look for me? Did you care that I was gone? Do you ever wonder if I might have lived?" "Steady, Kit," Kurama's voice rumbled within his mind. "He abandoned you. He chose to believe you dead rather than verify. Remember that." The fox was right, but the knowledge didn't eliminate the complex tangle of emotions seeing his former sensei provoked. Anger, yes, but also something that might have been grief for the relationship they'd never had the chance to develop. "Papers," Kakashi said when their wagon reached the front of the line, his tone professionally neutral. The merchant handed over their travel documents, and Kakashi's eyes scanned the manifest with practiced efficiency. When his gaze fell on Naruto and Yujito, listed as hired security, he paused for just a moment. "Security personnel," he noted aloud. "Names and village of origin?" "Kenzo," Naruto replied in his rougher accent, meeting Kakashi's gaze without flinching. "No village." "Freelance." "Yuki," Yujito added. "Same circumstances." Kakashi's visible eye studied them both with the intensity that had once made Naruto's stomach flutter with nervousness. Now it simply made him more alert, more aware of how he held his body and controlled his breathing. "Unusual to see unaffiliated shinobi of your apparent skill level," Kakashi observed. "Most ninja of your caliber maintain village ties. Most villages don't betray their own people," Naruto replied, allowing just enough bitterness to color his words. "Some of us learn better." Something flickered in Kakashi's expression, too quick to identify, but present nonetheless. For a moment, Naruto wondered if his former sensei saw something familiar in his transformed features, some echo of the student he'd failed to protect. But then the moment passed, and Kakashi was handing back their papers with professional disinterest. "Move along," he said. "Stay on the main roads and avoid traveling after dark. There have been bandit attacks in this region." As their wagon rolled past the checkpoint, Naruto forced himself not to look back. But he could feel Kakashi's gaze following them until they disappeared around a bend in the road. "Well," Yujito murmured once they were safely out of earshot. "That was educational." "How so?" "He recognized something about you. Not consciously, perhaps, but some part of him knew." She glanced at him sideways. "How does that feel?" Naruto considered the question. How did it feel to be not quite recognized by the man who'd been supposed to train and protect him? To stand face to face with his former sensei and remain undetected behind carefully constructed lies? "Empty," he said finally. "Like talking to a stranger who happens to look like someone I used to know." It was true. Whatever connection he'd once felt to Kakashi had been severed so completely that seeing him again felt like encountering a character from a book he'd read long ago. Familiar in outline but holding no emotional resonance. "Good," Kurama approved. "You have moved beyond the need for his acknowledgement. That is strength, Kit." "Yeah, I suppose it is." But that night, as they made camp with the caravan, Naruto found himself staring at the stars and wondering about the other members of his former team. Kakashi had been changed by the years. Harder, perhaps, with new lines around his visible eye that spoke of responsibilities he'd carried alone. What had happened to Sakura? To Sasuke? Did they ever think about the teammate who died because they'd failed to verify his condition before abandoning him? "You're thinking too loud," Yujito observed, settling beside him on the rough ground. "Am I? I can practically hear the gears turning." She leaned against his shoulder, a warm presence in the cool night air. "Want to talk about it? Just wondering how different things might have been," Naruto admitted. "If they'd cared enough to check. If they'd found me before you did. Different. But not necessarily better." Yujito's voice carried the weight of certainty. "You needed to be broken before you could be properly rebuilt, Naruto. The boy you were. desperate for acceptance, willing to sacrifice anything for acknowledgement. He was never going to be truly strong. And now you're someone who doesn't need their validation. Someone who's found his worth in something deeper than others' opinions. She turned to look at him, her transformed features still beautiful despite the disguise. That person? He was worth the pain of becoming. As sleep finally claimed him, Naruto realized she was right. The boy who dreamed of being Hokage was gone, replaced by someone whose loyalties lay with mountain peaks and storm cloud eyes and the rumbling approval of an ancient fox spirit. He'd found his strength in abandonment, his family in exile, his purpose in protecting those who'd chosen to value him. And tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that the discarded weapon of Konoha had become something far more dangerous in the skilled hands of Kumobikir. The mission continued. The merchant caravan reached its destination 3 days later, a trading post that served as a way station for goods moving between Fire Country's interior and its coastal ports. It was here, according to their intelligence, that several key figures in the smuggling network would converge for a monthly coordination meeting. Naruto and Yujito had identified at least 3 Konoha agents within the caravan during their journey, confirming that the intelligence network was indeed being systematically compromised. But the scale of the operation suggested resources and coordination beyond what a simple criminal organization could manage. There, Yujito murmured as they observed the trading post from a concealed position in the surrounding forest. Southeast building, 2nd floor. Do you see the chakra signatures? Naruto extended his senses, feeling for the telltale energy patterns that marked skilled shinobi. What he found made his blood run cold. That's not possible, he breathed. 7 distinct signatures, each powerful enough to register as Jonin level at minimum. But it was the quality of their chakra that set off alarm bells in his mind. Dark, twisted, carrying the particular resonance that marked users of forbidden techniques. Danger, Kurama growled within his mindscape. These are not ordinary missing need, Kit. I sense wrongness. Corruption. We need to get closer, Yujito said, but her voice carried the same tension Naruto felt. If this is what I think it is. They moved through the forest with the fluid stealth that Kumo's mountain training had perfected, closing distance until they could observe the building directly. What they saw confirmed their worst fears. The meeting wasn't just about smuggling operations or intelligence networks. Maps covered the walls. Detailed layouts of every major village, with particular attention paid to security measures around Jinchuriki residences. Photos and dossiers were spread across a central table, and Naruto recognized his own face among them. Though thankfully, it was his old appearance, not his current transformed features. But it was the individuals attending the meeting that made his heart skip. 7 figures in black cloaks marked with red clouds. Their faces were largely concealed, but the power radiating from them was unmistakable. These weren't ordinary criminals or even typical missing need. These were predators of the highest caliber. Akatsuki, Yujito whispered, her voice barely audible. It has to be the organization they'd been warned about, the one rumored to be collecting powerful missing need for unknown purposes. But seeing them gathered like this, studying detailed intelligence on Jinchuriki locations and capabilities, their purpose became horrifyingly clear. They're hunting us, Naruto realized. All of us. Every container. Then we must strike first, Kurama snarled. Kill them before they can move against our family. No. Naruto's response was firm despite the fox's bloodthirsty urgings. We're outnumbered 7-2, and we don't know their full capabilities. This is intelligence gathering, not a combat mission. But even as he spoke, one of the figures in the room turned toward their concealed position, as if sensing their presence despite the distance and their careful chakra suppression. Move, Yujito hissed. Now, they retreated deeper into the forest, putting distance between themselves and the trading post. But Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that they'd been detected, that their careful observation had been noted and filed away for future reference. We need to report this immediately, Yujito said once they'd reached a safe distance. The Reikage needs to know what we're dealing with, agreed. But first, we need to warn the others. Naruto's mind was already racing through possibilities, calculating travel times and communication routes. If Akatsuki is actively hunting Jinchuriki, then B is in danger. All of them are. They made their way to a prearranged safe house, an abandoned cabin deep in the forest where they could use secure communication jutsu without fear of interception. Yujito's message to Kumobikyo was brief but comprehensive, outlining the threat level and requesting immediate consultation with the Reikage. The response came within hours, and its contents made their blood run cold. 3 Jinchuriki had vanished in the past month. The 5 tails from a Wabikure, the 4 tails from an unknown location, and most recently, the 7 tails from Takigekure. In each case, the container's body had been found days later, dead with their tailed beast extracted. Akatsuki wasn't just planning to hunt Jinchuriki. They were already doing it. Orders are to return immediately, Yujito reported after finishing the decoded message. The Reikage is recalling all assets for village defense. What about the mission? The intelligence network? Secondary concern now. Our survival takes priority over gathering information about smuggling operations. Yujito's expression was grim. If Akatsuki is actively collecting tailed beasts, then every Jinchuriki is a target. That includes us. They began packing immediately. But before they could leave the safe house, Naruto felt a familiar chakra signature approaching through the forest. One he recognized despite 3 years of separation and growth. We have company, he warned Yujito. And it's not Akatsuki. The door to the cabin burst open, revealing 3 figures in Konoha uniforms. Kakashi Hatake entered first, followed by 2 ninja Naruto didn't recognize, both wearing the distinctive armor of ANBU operatives. Well, Kakashi said, his visible eye fixed on their faces. Kenzo and Yuki, was it? Imagine meeting you again so soon. Naruto's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but Yujito's subtle gesture stopped him. They were outnumbered and surrounded, with limited room for maneuver in the confined space. We're just travelers, Yujito said calmly, maintaining her transformation despite the obvious futility. If we've trespassed on private property, cut the act. One of the ANBU operatives snapped. We know what you are. The question is whether you're working with the organization we're tracking or if you're here for the same reason we are. Kakashi raised a hand, silencing his subordinate. His attention remained fixed on Naruto, and there was something in his gaze that suggested recognition beyond their previous encounter at the checkpoint. You know, he said conversationally, there's something familiar about your chakra signature, Kenzo. Something that reminds me of someone I used to know. Naruto felt his heart hammering against his ribs, but forced his voice to remain steady. I get that a lot. Must be one of those faces. Must be. Kakashi's tone was deceptively casual. Though I have to say, the resemblance is remarkable. Especially around the eyes. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, pressure building with each passing second. Naruto could feel Yujito's tension, could sense the ANBU operatives preparing for violence if their cover story collapsed completely. Then Kakashi did something that caught everyone off guard. He pulled down his mask, revealing his full face for the first time Naruto could remember. But it wasn't the revelation of features that made Naruto's breath catch. It was the expression written there. Grief. Regret. And something that might have been hope. Naruto, Kakashi said quietly. It's time to come home. The words hit like a physical blow, shattering the careful emotional barriers Naruto had constructed over 3 years of exile and growth. For a moment, just a moment, he was 12 years old again, desperate for acknowledgement from the sensei who never seemed to see him as more than an obligation. But then Yujito's hand found his, squeezing gently, and the moment of weakness passed. I don't know who you think I am, Naruto said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. But you're mistaken. Kakashi's eye searched his face, reading the truth behind the denial. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of years' worth of accumulated guilt. I looked for you, he said. After Wave Country. I searched for weeks, followed every lead, turned over every stone. But the trail went cold at the border, and eventually... He stopped, swallowing hard. Eventually, I had to accept that you were gone. But you gave up, Yujito said, her own transformation dropping away to reveal her true features. You declared him dead without finding a body. Kakashi's attention shifted to her, taking in the Kumobikure headband she now wore openly. And you are? Yujito ni. The one who found him bleeding to death on that bridge while his teammates walked away. Her voice carried cold anger. The one who gave him a reason to live when his own village had given him none. The ANBU operatives moved restlessly, hands drifting toward weapons. But Kakashi gestured for them to remain calm. "Kumo agents," he said, understanding flooding his voice. "You've been operating in Fire Country under false identities. We've been investigating threats to our village's security," Yujito corrected. "Threats that your intelligence networks have been too compromised to detect on their own, Akatsuki, among others." Yujito's expression was coldly professional. "But that's not your concern anymore. We're leaving." "No." Kakashi's voice carried the authority of years spent in command. "You're not." The cabin erupted into motion. The ANBU operatives moved to block the exits while Kakashi's hands flew through familiar hand seals. But they were dealing with opponents who'd been forged in Kumo's uncompromising crucible, who'd learned to fight as partners with absolute trust in each other's abilities. Naruto's transformation exploded outward in a burst of golden chakra, Kurama's power flowing through him like liquid lightning. But this wasn't the wild, uncontrolled rage of his younger years. This was precision, purpose, the culmination of 3 years' worth of training and growth. Yujito moved in perfect synchronization, her own tailed beast transformation wreathing her in blue fire that turned the cabin's interior into an inferno of controlled destruction. They flowed around each other like dancers, covering vulnerabilities and creating openings with the fluid grace of true partnership. The ANBU operatives were skilled, experienced, dangerous. But they were fighting two Jinchuriki who'd learned to use their power as extensions of themselves rather than burdens to be controlled. When the dust settled, Kakashi stood alone among the wreckage of the cabin, his subordinates unconscious but alive. Naruto and Yujito were gone, vanished into the forest like smoke on the wind. But before they'd left, Naruto had turned back one final time. "Tell them," he'd said, his voice carrying the weight of 3 years' worth of growth and pain. "Tell them that Naruto Uzumaki is exactly where he belongs. And he's never coming back." Now they ran through the forest toward the Lightning Country border, leaving Fire Country behind for what Naruto knew would be the final time. His old life was truly dead now, buried not just in official records but in the acknowledgement of those who'd once known him. "Are you content with this choice, kid?" Kurama asked within his mind. "Yes," Naruto replied without hesitation. "I am." Behind them, in the ruins of the cabin, Kakashi stood alone with the weight of his failures and the knowledge that the student he'd lost was lost by choice rather than circumstance. Ahead lay the mountains of Lightning Country, and home, and the family that had chosen to claim him when his blood relations had failed. Naruto Uzumaki was going home, but not to the village of his birth. The journey back to Kumobikyu took 4 days of hard travel, pushing through mountain passes and hidden paths that only Kumo ninja knew. Naruto and Yujito moved with urgency born of necessity. Their mission had been compromised, their identities blown, and the intelligence they carried was too valuable to risk losing to pursuit. But it was more than tactical concerns that drove them. The encounter with Kakashi had stirred up emotions Naruto thought he'd successfully buried, forcing him to confront the reality that his past would never truly release its claim on him. "You're quiet," Yujito observed as they crested a ridge that offered their first view of Kumobikyu's lightning crown peaks. "Processing," Naruto admitted, pausing to take in the sight of home. The village looked exactly as he'd left it, eternal, unchanging, carved from living rock and crowned with lightning rods that caught the afternoon sun like spears of light. But seeing it now, after everything that had happened in Fire Country, it meant something different, something deeper. This was his sanctuary, his fortress, the place where he'd learned what family truly meant. "Kakashi's words are still echoing in your head," Yujito said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah." Naruto resumed walking, his pace unconsciously quickening as they drew closer to the village. 3 years, Yujito. 3 years he's been carrying guilt over my death. And what does that change? Nothing. It doesn't undo the abandonment. It doesn't erase the fact that he gave up. And yet it troubles you, Kurama observed within his mind. Why? It was a fair question, one Naruto had been wrestling with since they'd fled the cabin. Why should Kakashi's guilt matter to him? Why should belated regret from any of his former teammates affect someone who'd moved so far beyond their sphere of influence? "Because I'm not completely heartless," Naruto said aloud, knowing Yujito would understand he was responding to internal dialogue as much as their conversation. Part of me, a small part, still remembers what it felt like to want their approval. To dream of being the student who made them proud. And that part hurts for the boy who never got the chance to earn that approval, Yujito finished. It's not weakness, Naruto. It's human. They reached the village gates as evening shadows began to stretch across the mountain slopes. The guards recognized them immediately, relief visible on their faces as they took in the returning agents. The Reikage wants to see you immediately, one of them reported. Priority briefing, no delays. They made their way through familiar streets, past shops and homes where people waved in genuine greeting rather than suspicious fear. Children didn't flee from Naruto's presence. They called out cheerful hellos, recognizing him as one of their protectors rather than a threat to be avoided. The contrast with his childhood in Konoha couldn't have been more stark. The Reikage's office hummed with activity when they arrived. Maps covered every available surface, marked with troop movements and intelligence reports. Killer Bee stood beside his brother's desk, for once looking serious rather than playful. Other senior jonin filled the room, their expressions grim with the weight of impending crisis. Report, they commanded without preamble as they entered. Yujito delivered their findings with professional efficiency. The Akatsuki organization, the systematic hunting of Jinchuriki, the scale of their intelligence network and the sophistication of their operations. When she finished, the room fell silent for several long moments. 7 members confirmed, the Reikage said finally. All S rank in terms of threat assessment. And their goal is the systematic capture of all 9-tailed beasts. That's what the evidence suggests, Naruto confirmed. They're not just collecting power for its own sake. There's a larger plan at work, something that requires all 9 bijou. The 10 tails, B said quietly, his usual rhyming speech pattern abandoned in the face of gravity. Old legends speak of a progenitor beast, the source from which all 9-tailed beasts were born. If someone were to reunite them, the implications hung in the air like a physical weight. A being with the power of all 9-tailed beasts combined would be beyond anything the ninja world had ever faced. A weapon capable of reshaping reality itself. We need to accelerate our defensive preparations, they decided. Double the patrols around the village, activate all sleeper agents in potential target zones, and begin coordination with other villages. If Akatsuki is targeting all Jinchuriki, then Konoha, Suna, and IWA are facing the same threat we are. Sir, Naruto interjected carefully. There's something else. We were identified during the mission. Konoha knows we were operating in Fire Country. The Reikage's expression darkened. Explain. Naruto recounted the encounter with Kakashi, the recognition, the brief but intense confrontation that had revealed his survival to his former sensei. When he finished, it was silent for several long moments. This changes our strategic position, the Reikage said finally. Konoha now knows that one of their supposedly dead Jinchuriki is alive and operating as a Kumo agent. They'll want answers. They'll want you back. And they can't have him, Yujito said fiercely. Naruto is a citizen of this village now. He's earned his place here through blood, sweat, and loyalty. No one gets to reclaim him like lost property. Agreed, they said firmly. But we need to be prepared for the political fallout. Konoha will likely demand explanations, possibly even his return. Our response needs to be clear and unambiguous. What kind of response? Naruto asked. His smile was sharp as lightning. The kind that makes it clear we don't negotiate with people who abandon their own children to die. Over the next several hours, they refined their intelligence and prepared comprehensive briefings for allied villages. The threat Akatsuki represented was too large for any single village to handle alone. Cooperation would be essential for survival. But it was the personal briefing Naruto received from the Reikage that would stay with him longest. Walk with me, he said after the formal debriefing concluded. They made their way to the Reikage's private office, where towering windows offered a view of the entire village spread out below them. 3 years ago, you came to us broken, it began without preamble. Abandoned, betrayed, left to die by the people who should have protected you. I took you in not out of charity, but because I saw potential that others had overlooked. I remember. Do you? Do you remember what I told you about the choice you'd have to make? About burying whatever weak sentiment you held for those who'd wronged you. Naruto nodded slowly. You said I'd have to decide who I wanted to become. And have you? Decided, I mean. A turn from the window to study Naruto's face. Because the man who walked into my office today isn't the same one who left on this mission. Something's changed. It was true. The encounter with Kakashi had forced Naruto to confront aspects of himself he thought resolved. The boy who desperately wanted acknowledgement wasn't completely dead. He'd simply been buried beneath years of growth and new loyalties. I've decided, Naruto said finally. I'm exactly where I belong, with the people who chose to value me when it mattered. But that doesn't mean I can pretend the past never happened. Good. His approval was evident in his voice. Because pretending wounds don't exist doesn't heal them. It just lets them fester. You've acknowledged what was, accepted what is, and chosen what will be. That's the mark of someone who's truly grown. What happens now? With Konoha, I mean. Now we make it clear that Naruto Uzumaki belongs to Kumogakure. And anyone who wants to challenge that claim is welcome to try. A's expression turned predatory. Let them come. Let them see what their abandoned weapon has become in the hands of people who understand his true value. That night, Naruto sat on the balcony of his apartment, looking out over the village lights and thinking about the strange turns his life had taken. 3 years ago, he'd been a desperate boy seeking approval from people who saw him as a burden. Now he was a man with a home, a purpose, and people who'd chosen to claim him as family. Deep thoughts? Yujito asked, settling beside him on the balcony railing. Just reflecting on how far we've come. He gestured toward the village spread out below them. All of us. Regrets? No. The answer came without hesitation. Everything that happened, the abandonment, the pain, finding you, finding this place, it all led to this moment. This life. I wouldn't change any of it. Yujito smiled, leaning against his shoulder with comfortable intimacy. Even the parts that hurt? Especially the parts that hurt. Pain taught me what I was willing to fight for. What I was willing to protect. He turned to look at her, seeing his own feelings reflected in her storm-gray eyes. It taught me the difference between wanting to be loved and actually being loved. And now I know what I'm fighting for. Not recognition or approval or the chance to prove myself to people who never deserved the effort. His voice grew stronger, more certain. I'm fighting for home. For family. For the people who saw value in a broken boy and helped him become something better. Well said, kid, Kurama rumbled approvingly within his mind. We have found our place at last. Yeah, Naruto agreed silently. We have, as if summoned by his thoughts. A messenger hawk landed on the balcony railing, carrying official communications from other villages. The response to their intelligence about Akatsuki was swift and comprehensive. Every major village was mobilizing defensive measures, preparing for the storm that was coming. But as Naruto read through the reports, one message caught his attention. It was from Konoha, addressed specifically to the Reikage, requesting information about rumors of a deceased Konoha ninja operating under Kumogakure authority. They're testing the waters, Yujito observed, reading over his shoulder. Seeing how we'll respond to official inquiries. And how will we respond? Truthfully. Yujito's smile was sharp. Naruto Uzumaki died in Wave Country 3 years ago. What they're asking about is a Kumogakure ninja who happens to share some physical characteristics with their lost asset. It was a diplomatic fiction that would satisfy no one but might prevent immediate escalation. The truth was simpler. Naruto belonged to Kumo now, and no amount of political pressure would change that fact. But even as they prepared for the challenges ahead, Akatsuki, political pressure from Konoha, the larger war that seemed increasingly inevitable, Naruto felt something he never experienced in his old life. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose. He knew who he was, where he belonged, and what he was willing to sacrifice to protect it. The boy who dreamed of becoming Hokage was gone. In his place stood a man ready to defend his chosen family against any threat, no matter the cost. And that man was exactly who he was meant to be. 6 months had passed since their return from Fire Country, and Kumogakure had transformed into a fortress preparing for war. The intelligence about Akatsuki had galvanized not just Kumo but the entire ninja world, creating unprecedented cooperation between villages that had been enemies for generations. Naruto stood in the training ground where he'd first learned to merge with Kurama's power, watching as a new generation of Kumo ninja practiced techniques he'd helped develop. The integration of Jinchuriki abilities into standard combat doctrine had given their forces capabilities no other village could match. But it was the personal developments that meant the most to him. "You're staring at that ring like it might explode," Killer Bee observed, materializing beside him with his characteristic lack of regard for personal space. Naruto looked down at the simple band of metal in his palm, lightning country silver, inscribed with symbols that represented protection and eternal bonds. It had taken him 3 weeks to find the courage to purchase it, and another week to work up the nerve to carry it with him. "It's a big decision," Naruto said. "Yo, little bro, let me break it down for you," Bee launched into one of his rap sequences. "Love ain't about perfect timing or doubt. It's about knowing what you can live without. She's been your partner through thick and thin, so stop hesitating and let the real talk begin." Despite his nervousness, Naruto found himself smiling. "When did you become a relationship counselor?" "Since forever, fool. The ladies love my wisdom and my style so cool." Bee's grin was infectious. "But seriously, kid, you've been dancing around this for months. Either you trust what you've built together or you don't." It was true. His relationship with Yujito had deepened gradually over the past 3 years, growing from mentorship to friendship to something that defied easy categorization. She was his partner in every sense that mattered. In battle, in quiet moments, in the daily work of building a life worth living. But marriage? That was a commitment that went beyond partnership, beyond even love. It was a promise to build something together that would outlast whatever storms might come. "The cat is worthy of such a bond," Kurama observed within his mind. "She has proven her loyalty, her strength, her commitment to our pack." "What holds you back, Kit?" "Fear, I guess," Naruto admitted internally. "Fear that I'm not enough. That I'll fail her the way others failed you?" The fox's voice carried unusual gentleness. "Kit, you are not them. You have learned what loyalty means, what commitment costs. You would die before betraying those you love. I know. But knowing and feeling are different things. Then perhaps it is time to trust in what you feel rather than what you fear." As if summoned by his thoughts, Yujito appeared at the edge of the training ground, approaching with the fluid grace that had first caught his attention years ago. She was dressed in her standard Jonin uniform, but something in her expression suggested she had news. "The Reikage wants to see us," she reported, falling into step beside him as they made their way toward the administration building. "Priority briefing. Any idea what it's about?" "Intelligence from our network in Fire Country. Something about Konoha's response to our presence there. They found the Reikage's office buzzing with activity, maps and reports covering every available surface." I looked up as they entered, his expression unreadable. "We've received an official communication from Konoha," he announced without preamble. "They're requesting a formal meeting to discuss what they term mutual concerns regarding shared personnel." Naruto felt his stomach tighten. "They want me back. They want to negotiate," he corrected. "The language is carefully diplomatic, but the message is clear. They know you're alive, they know you're operating as a Kumo agent, and they want to discuss terms for your return." "There are no terms," Yujito said flatly. "Naruto is a citizen of this village. He's earned his place here through service and sacrifice. No one gets to reclaim him like lost property." "Agreed," the Reikage said. "But we need to handle this carefully. Konoha has significant political influence, and we can't afford to alienate potential allies with Akatsuki still active." "What kind of meeting are they proposing?" Naruto asked. "Neutral ground, equal representation from both villages, formal diplomatic protocols." I leaned back in his chair, studying Naruto's face. "The question is whether you're prepared to face them directly." It was the moment Naruto had been dreading since their encounter with Kakashi. The prospect of sitting across a negotiating table from his former teammates, of explaining why he'd chosen to build a new life rather than return to the old one. "Yes," he said finally. "I'm ready." "Good. Because I want you there when we tell them exactly what their abandoned weapon has become." The meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks hence, at a neutral location in the borderlands between Lightning and Fire Country. It would be Naruto's first official appearance as a Kumogakure representative. The moment when his transformation from discarded child to valued citizen became a matter of international record. But first, there was something else he needed to do. That evening, Naruto found Yujito on the balcony of her apartment, watching the sunset paint the mountain peaks in shades of gold and crimson. She turned as he approached, and something in his expression made her go very still. Yujito, he began, then stopped, suddenly uncertain of the words he'd been rehearsing all day. Yes? Instead of speaking, he dropped to one knee, pulling the ring from his pocket with hands that trembled only slightly. Her eyes went wide, one hand rising to cover her mouth. 3 years ago, you saved my life, he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. Not just from dying, but from becoming someone twisted by hatred and abandonment. You showed me what it meant to be valued, to belong, to have someone believe in me even when I'd stopped believing in myself. Tears gathered in her storm-gray eyes, but she remained silent, letting him speak. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what challenges we'll face or what sacrifices we'll have to make. But I know that whatever comes, I want to face it with you. As partners, as equals, as two people who chose each other when choice was all they had. He held up the ring, its simple surface catching the dying light. Yujito ni, will you marry me? The silence stretched between them for heartbeats that felt like hours. Then she was moving, dropping to her knees in front of him, her hands cupping his face as she kissed him with desperate intensity. Yes, she whispered against his lips. Yes, you ridiculous, wonderful man. Of course, yes, as he slipped the ring onto her finger. A perfect fit, as he'd somehow known it would be. Naruto felt something settle into place in his chest. Not completion, exactly, but foundation, the bedrock upon which everything else would be built. Well done, Kit, Kurama rumbled approvingly. You have chosen your mate wisely. Our mate, Naruto corrected silently. We're all family now. Indeed. And family protects family, no matter the cost. They spent the evening making plans, discussing the practical aspects of combining their lives officially as well as emotionally. Where they would live, how they would balance their individual careers with their partnership, what kind of ceremony they wanted. Small, Yujito said firmly when the subject of a wedding came up. Just family. The people who matter. The Reikage will want to make it a political statement, Naruto pointed out. The first marriage between a naturalized citizen and a clan heir in decades. Then he'll be disappointed. This isn't about politics or statements or proving anything to anyone. Yujito's expression was fierce. This is about us. About the life we've built together and the future we're choosing to create. It was, Naruto reflected, exactly the kind of response he should have expected from the woman who taught him the difference between being needed and being wanted. The next morning brought a flurry of activity as word of their engagement spread through the village. Congratulations came from expected quarters. B was insufferably pleased with himself for his relationship advice. The Reikage expressed formal approval. Their fellow jonin offered the kind of ribald commentary that passed for well wishes among shinobi.